So in the last episode, we spent a lot of time polishing up the body and getting that to look absolutely lovely, and I'm very, very happy with the outcome of that. Additionally, so I'm not dragging things out too long, I've spent a bit of time polishing both the fretboard and the headstock of the neck, and also the lacquer on the back of the neck. So to all intents and purposes, the neck is ready to go. The lacquer on the back of the neck was very quick to do. These curved surfaces, there's not an awful lot of surface area, so you can kind of get those polished up quite quickly, and I'm really happy with the way that it's come out. It is kind of exactly where I want it to be at this stage. So next up is we need to do something about the frets on this because they haven't been dressed at all. But the problem I'm immediately faced with is I don't have a notched straight edge that will fit this scale. So I can't do my usual trick, which is to straighten the neck up using the truss rod and the notch straight edge to gauge that. So I'm going to have to do something else. And I think the best thing I can do is just to kind of get the frets in as straight a position as I possibly can. So to do that, I'm just going to kind of hold a straight edge against the neck and kind of check with a feeler gauge. This is 1/8 thou, so it's not really that thick. And it is starting to go under a little bit in the middle there. So I'm just going to kind of put a little bit of truss rod on, not too much. See if we can just pop that up a little bit. And that seems to have done it. There is a little bit of variability, but frets never really go into the fretboard absolutely perfectly. They will always need a little bit of adjustment and leveling. But I think that's probably as fair a compromise as we're going to get on this. So the next step is to get all of this masked up and just get these frets very, very quickly leveled. And as always, the first step in this is to kind of fire a couple of lengths of masking tape right the way along the back of the neck, and what I can do is use these hopefully to pull all the rest of the masking off in one go or in a few goes, rather than having to kind of peel every single one off individually, which can be very time consuming and a pain. And then from there, just apply some little bits right along the fretboard. And with those all nicely masked off, I'm just going to put some Sharpie over them just to guide me when I'm removing the material to level them all off. I've got a great big Sharpie for doing this, but I broke it, so I'm just going to have to make do with this kind of thinner one, but it does exactly the same job. Now, because this is an angled headstock, I don't want to be flexing the neck when I put pressure on to get these frets leveled. So I've just stuck it down to the bench, kind of loosely, with the headstock extending over the edge. So we're just getting it as flat and secure as possible. And because they are stainless frets, I'm just going to start off with this fret leveling file for the first instance. And then I've got a leveling beam with some 320 and 220 paper on respectively. So we'll start off with the file, then we'll clean things up with the leveling beam to a point where we can start to get the frets finished off properly. And I'm hoping, because these were pushed in rather than hammered in, that it's going to be quite a straightforward job. And we're not going to have to take too much material off. And that looks to be almost there. There's just this one here that needs a little bit off, but I'm not going to do that with the file. I'll now go down to the beam and just kind of clean it up that way. And that actually went very, very quickly. Really happy with that. I'm just going to run the fret rocker over them. And that all seems to be spot on, which is good. So again, I'm just going to a bit of Sharpie on the job. So we can then break out the fret crowning file and get these re-crowned. Most of them are actually very close. I probably just need a tiny little bit. And as I say, I'm just going to start working my way along with this three-cornered fret crowning file. It's got all of the corners ground flat, so they're not going to dig into anything. And I just start putting that profile back in. What happens is when you level them, you will flatten the top of this off. So all we're doing here is just taking that flat top of the fret and putting the curves back in on each shoulder until you just have a very thin flat spot through the middle. And I like to go from one side then the other and alternate until I get where I'm going. That tends to keep things centered a lot better. And hopefully you'll be able to see there, that's the kind of shape returned to the fret. And just got that thin line of black going right the way through it. So that's pretty much the shape put back in. Now we need to start to get these into a little bit more of a polished state. And we'll start to do that with some fine wet and dry paper. And all I've got is, I'm going to start with some 400 paper on a little wooden block. at this stage we're not really taking enough material to alter the physical characteristics of the fret. We're just taking scratches out. And again, 600 on the block. They're already starting to look really nice. And then I'm going to take some 800 not on a block and just start rubbing that in, and what that will do is my fingers will push it kind of into the side faces of the frets and just clean those up as well. And then we'll just repeat that with some 1200. And for the time being, that's the polishing done. So the next step in this is we need to just make sure that these fret ends are nice and kind of smooth and are not sharp in any way and are going to be pleasant to the touch. However, you might have heard me say this before, and you might have seen me actually do a video where I brought a guitar back into the shop to deal with the fret sprout. Fret sprout is a problem that I have in this shop, primarily because the shop isn't heated. So when I get the guitars into a nice warm dry environment, I tend to get a little bit of shrinkage on my fretboards, but of course the frets don't shrink because they're metal, and that results in there being ever such a slight overhang of the fret from the fretboard, which means you have to bring them in and just kind of redo the fret ends, clean them up, remove that excess material, reshape them, give it a bit of polish, and from there on in you're good to go. I can't see the point in making these absolutely beautiful and perfect just to have to kind of bring them back in a month or so to redo them. So I'm going to give them a quick going over just to make sure that they're not kind of sharp and uncomfortable to play, but I will be kind of revisiting this at a later date. Now I've covered this a number of times, and there is a definite technique to this that will make your life very easy, and that is this file has got two distinct sides. I'll bring you in a bit closer on it in a minute and show you, but it's got this side here that's got a very square and sharp edge, and this side has got a rounded edge. And what that means is you can get the sharp edge right into the corner between the fret and the fretboard, because that's where the sharpness that you'll feel is. And you can get right into that corner and remove the excess material. Then you can flip the file over and use the rounded edge just to put that kind of ball end onto the fret. And immediately they feel much, much better. But obviously there's 20 of these, and they've each got two sides. So this is going to take a little while, and I won't bore you with hours of footage of it, but I will endeavour to get a close-up shot. So this is the square edge of the file, and we get that right into the corner at an angle, take it out. And then turn it over, work your way around. Just put that bevel in, that will make it nice and smooth to the touch. Right, I'll work my way up the rest of the fretboard and I'll get back to you when this is done. And after a long time, I've got those fret ends done, and I've gone over them with the same grits of paper as I did the rest of the fret. So we've got a very nice smooth finish there, at least for the time being. So now all we need to do is to give these their final polish, and to do that I've got a bit of Autosol metal polish and the good old Dremel, which will polish them up very nicely. Simply don't need much, drop a little bit of polish on. And just give them a bit of a whiz up with the Dremel. And you can see that's come up absolutely beautifully straight away. So I'll just work my way down the board, get the rest of them done. And this bit actually goes quite quickly. We've got those polished up probably in about 5 minutes, and they all come up very nice and are very kind of smooth to the touch. If you run a fingernail across them, they're not catching or anything, it doesn't feel rough, which is nice. So now, hopefully, all of this will come off quite quickly without too much bother. And for the most part, that's come off really easily, so very happy with that. There's a little bit of residue to clean up on the binding. That literally just needs a bit of a rub with a cloth. And then the last thing I want to do, which is going to be a bit of an ongoing thing, is just start getting a bit of oil into this board, because it's been through quite a lot over the last few months and it is kind of looking a bit dry. So we'll just start rubbing a bit of that in. It's probably going to take quite a few coats to get it where we need it, but I think already it's starting to look nice and dark, which is good. So I'm just going to let that kind of soak in for a bit and then repeat that. And that should be the work on the neck done for the time being. All we need to do now is start to assemble it, but that's obviously going to be for the next episode. I think we've done quite enough in this one, so I'm going to leave this one here. I'll be back in a couple of days' time when we can finally start putting this base together and get it a little bit nearer the stage where we can play it. So as always, if you've enjoyed this, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you in a few days' time in the next episode. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.